Okay, I have my handkerchief so they won't attack me.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta let the small one pee on you. Is that?
I didn't mention that. I didn't want to. But
Hello, Snake Triplets. It is I, McDonald Miller here. Don't mind the helicopter noises. I'm just trying to swat a couple of bothersome flies. What is this? Some sort of daycare for les enfants terribles? Our first snake is the one with the recessive genes, but still pretty solid. Come out of that box, Cam. We can see you.
Hello, I'm Cam.
Yeah.
But I'm still hoping that at the end of this podcast, we keep our arrangement where you guys do a strip search of me.
As we can do the blur out, as long as we can do the little blur out part of the screen, then we're good.
Our second snake is Gaseous Snake. His code name speaks for itself. T, how are you?
I'm all right. Love is blooming right now on the battlefield.
That's right. And our third snake is Plasma Snake, because all the other states of matter were already taken. Sorry about that. You got the leftovers. Cody, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. And you can find my contact info on the back of the CD case.
And surprise, it is I, Liquid Snake. You never saw it coming.
Serious? Oh my god. I've told you everything.
You never saw it coming. I successfully impersonated a close mentor of yours, and you couldn't even tell.
Nope.
If you haven't figured it out yet, we're discussing a classic today, Metal Gear Solid. But before we kick off that discussion, just want to take a moment to let you know how you can engage with the show better. We are a game club style show where we choose a game ahead of time, thoroughly play through it, and then discuss it with an expert panel. Next month, we will be discussing Super Mario Land 2. So we encourage you to try it out ahead of our discussion, and then come and join us and give us your feedback. So, with that being said, let's jump into this podcast. So, Metal Gear Solid, it's a game that came out all the way in 1998. So just a quick little check on where we were all in 1998. Cam and I were 16 years old. T, you were the ripe age of 2. So you were probably...
I was at least born for this one, so
yes.
Some of these it's not so good.
Yeah, and you were probably mature enough to play this at the time, right?
I always thought so.
Yeah. And
he was a terrible infant.
Yeah.
I remember. I'm skipping ahead now. I played Metal Gear Solid 4 at Cam's house one time, and I came home and I asked my mom if I could get that game, and she's like, "Is it bad?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty bad."
I had a similar conversation about the first game, but it was back in '98.
And so, Cody, I think you were probably in middle school at the time?
Yeah, I was about 12, 13 about the time, listening to Bare Naked Ladies was super popular, I remember, and
so you were edgy.
Thing. Yeah.
Anyway, this game is developed and published by Konami, legendary auteur developer of Hideo Kojima. It was for the PlayStation originally. It's since come to a couple other systems. And it's a stealth action game, and the Metacritic at the time says it got 94 out of 100. So this is a pretty highly rated at the time. But let's give this the TwinCast treatment and see what we think of it and how it holds up today. So I want to start off by talking about how we got introduced to this game. And let's kick it off with you, Cody. How did you get introduced to Metal Gear Solid?
Oh, wow. So this one, first of all, I'd never played the series before. And this was around the time when I was like transitioning from just video games was a fun thing to like this is my hobby and I want to learn about it and I'm gonna read all the gaming magazines. And actually, my first experience with this was in a demo disc, and I think it was during that "You Are Not Ready" PS1 campaign. If you guys remember that,
Oh,
had like
that's like
different
a
commercials.
deep cut. You're like
Yeah,
awakening some memories that I didn't know I had. Yeah.
and it wasn't
I
ready.
gotta look this up.
Literally an E that was red, and it was like that late '90s edgy kind of time. I definitely remember that playing a lot in different like gaming ads. And I want to say I got this demo disc in like EGM or I think it was like official PlayStation magazine. One of those, it was just in the back, of the plastic sleeve. Popped it in. It had Gran Turismo and Medieval on there as well.
Yeah.
And it was just, I think I played it after I got sick of playing the Medieval demo, to be honest. And I just got kind of instantly hooked. This was kind of like my first dad game, where up until then I was just playing mostly action games, arcadey type games, and then this one was like a spy movie, like an action movie, and I was kind of all in, and that was it. No exposure to the series, just the demo disc.
Man, those demo discs back in the day, man, they were lifesavers for someone like I guess I assume you too, but like who didn't have a lot of money to get video games, and so you would play them. And man, it really worked. We'll get into that here in a minute.
I got a ton of miles out of that demo for sure.
Yeah. T, let's shift it over to you. So, what was your first introduction to this game?
My first introduction was Twin Snakes, actually, so the remake on the GameCube. And I was blown away. I must have been around 10, maybe younger. I was probably younger than that. And I remember it was hooked up to one of the TVs, and I was babysitting one of my little cousins, and I stuck her on the bed next to me as I was playing this game, and she fell asleep as I was playing Twin Snakes, and I was just blown away. I thought it was the coolest thing. Like I felt like an action hero, and Twin Snakes, as I'm sure we're going to discuss, is a lot more cinematic than even the PS1 version. But yeah, that's my first memory. I remember fighting my older sister over the GameCube because she wanted to play Monkey Ball and I wanted to play Twin Snakes. So I was playing the adult game, so I felt like I had the right.
You were a big boy, yeah.
I was a big boy, yeah.
Yeah. All right, Cam. So, what about you? When did you get introduced to this game?
Well, much like Cody, it was through the demo disc that we got an official PlayStation magazine. Now, I can't remember if we borrowed that, if we actually got it ourselves. Do you remember, Clark?
So, I don't know exactly where we got the demo disc, but I do remember specifically that it was, I guess it was Christmas '98. It must have been. We took our Christmas money together and we went to not software, etc. It wasn't. It was Media Play, and we went to Media Play, and
we picked up a PlayStation.
A PlayStation, but we didn't get Metal Gear Solid at first. We got this other game it was called Cardia. And it was okay. Like, it was like a kind of run-the-mill tactical RPG. But in that mess of games, we had a demo disc somehow, and we played Metal Gear Solid. So I remember us going and switching. Like, we took that Cardia game, and we swapped it back for Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah, because much like Cody, we played that demo disc a lot. And the demo for Metal Gear Solid was just so awesome. It's like nothing we had ever played before. I mean, you and I had played the Nintendo game, the original Metal Gear, and this was just much cooler.
It wasn't even close, like not even comparable.
Yeah, but the original Nintendo game, for the hardware and stuff like that, it was good, but it was really hard for us when we were growing up, so we never really got into it. It was too hard for us as being little. But now that we were grown up teenagers,
you were men.
We were men.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can we can shoot people with guns and see the blood on the snow, and it was it was pretty
feel
awesome.
The love blooming on the battlefield.
Yeah, as a teenage boy, I bet that really hit home. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit, but some of the later stuff, like the ending and stuff like that, you really get those, like, as a teenager, you're like, oh, love. Well, I'm feeling something here.
Yeah.
But yes, I remember being blown away by the cinematics of the game, even the demo. One of the biggest things that I remember is coming up on that cargo elevator, and you come up, and then it has like the title screen, Metal Gear Solid, and it's like, whoa, it's like a movie. And then shortly after I remember the Hind D, and even in the demo, it, like, as it was the rotors were going, it rumbled your controller, and that was one of the first experiences I ever had with an effective rumble and immersing you into the game. So,
well, and oh, go ahead, T.
What did the demo cover? Which part of the game?
up to decoy octopus, like
yes.
DARPA chief.
Spoilers.
The DARPA chief. Sorry.
I think about this podcast. I think if at this point in time you haven't played these games, it's just too late for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't even put up spoiler warnings anymore because we're gonna be talking all about this thing. So
on the Rumble thing too, not the only good use of Rumble in this game. Maybe
Oh yeah. When we talked about boss fights, yeah,
Yep.
for sure.
yeah. Well, and just to pull on that cinematic comment there, it's all the things that you said. The in-game cutscenes, like using the camera angles from the in-game cutscenes that didn't take you out of the moment, was really revolutionary. And then, of course, the voice performance were like leaps and bounds over anything that we had seen before. Like, I mean, you could have. I didn't play it a lot, but like just compare it to like Resident Evil. Sorry, Cody, I know that's a favorite of yours, but it's.
I'm well aware of how cheesy and bad it is.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, this is obviously, all of us have a special place in our heart for this game. Just to to talk about it, like, how did this game like affect your taste in video games, the way that you looked at video games going forward? Cody, why don't you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, like I said before, I was about 12, and I think that's kind of around the age you start to, stop thinking hanging out with your parents is cool and everything's kind of edgy, and you want to learn more about the world, and you think you know everything. And this, I think, kind of came at the perfect time because it was just the cinematic nature of it, and it was like a movie, and it was dealing with war and weaponry and nuclear warheads, and I had just never seen anything like that. And going back, I feel like you'd be hard pressed to find something like this as far as how the story was presented. um I was just hooked. I don't know, I liked movies growing up, Die Hard being one of them, and this is kind of like a Die Hard movie in a way, but it just sort of hooked me. I didn't think like voice acting was a thing in video games. I didn't think a um in general a cinematic story could be told in video games like this. But it worked, and as bad as the textures were and as cheesy as kind of the anime um style portrayal of the story can get, it I don't know, it just worked for me. I was hooked, and I kind of wanted to look for other games that at least told the story, whether it was good or bad or cheesy. I just kind of wanted to see what stories I could find in video games.
Yeah. Now, I'm looking at the notes here, Cody, and I just want to confirm that this is true. Did you really play through this game the first time without a memory card?
Yeah, so that actually is another one of my notes. So I have to clarify, I got all the way to the Hind D boss fight at the top of the comms tower without a memory card. And this was basically the game that I got a PS1 for. I I had a cousin. We always played games together, but he got a PS1. We played Twisted Metal. We played Crash Bandicoot. But then I got my PlayStation. I don't think I even had any games for it yet, other than these demo discs. And I would actually borrow demo discs from my cousin. And then I begged to get this game and Tenchu, and I did. But I had used up all of my, you know, uh, good karma with my mom to get her to buy me the PS1 and those games. I didn't get a memory card. And she was like, "I've already spent too much money on this. You should have told me before." And so I was like, "Well, I am just gonna keep this thing on." This was back in the days, right, where you would uh, keep playing and you just turn the TV off and leave the console running. And that's what I did. I just kept it paused as long as I could in between sessions, and I got
Pray
all
there
the way to
wasn't a power outage.
yeah, that's exactly what happened. And it wasn't a power outage. It was just simply I was using my mom's TV and she just went in there and turned it off. Or kind of turned everything off. She saw the console was running and just figured I'd left it on.
Mhm.
Oh no!
And of course I was like, oh, no. And then it took about maybe another week or two of being a good little Cody. And then I asked again to buy a memory card. And then, of course, I had to explain what a memory card was and what it was used for. And finally got it, and I had to start fresh.
That's awesome. T, would you say that this game affected your taste in video games or your outlook of video games going forward too after you played Twin Snakes?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about that. I think the thing for me was that I just didn't realize that they were bad games at this point because I was, like I said, I was like younger than 10, so I was exposed to like all the games that you guys were playing. So, and you guys had good games at that point. Like you had figured out how to tell the bad ones from the good ones, and so it hadn't occurred to me that there were bad games until later when I got a PS3 finally and I got Lair. If you guys ever played that one.
I remember. I never played it, but I remember, hearing a lot about it.
Same.
So anyway, yeah, just this game. I just thought that all games were like AAA, like AAA stories, awesome gameplay, and it wasn't until later that I realized the cold hard truth that was not the case for all games.
Yeah. Now,
That is
Cam,
true. I feel like there's certain games that come around, even TV shows and movies, that just kind of make every other game look like crap at the time. This was one of them, and I always bring up The Last of Us as kind of being another one of those games. It just, I don't know, the quality, the acting, just kind of the production level made everything else just look like B movies.
yeah, this really felt like one of those level up moments for the game industry is when this came up. Like everything at this point, like this set the high water mark. Like everyone else after this point was shooting for. In fact, I remember there was a game that came out after Metal Gear Solid. It was, what was it? It was Sony produced. Now I'm gonna forget, but it was a stealth action game too. Help me out here, Cody. Cam, do you remember? Tim had it. What was it? Siphon Filter.
Siphon Filter. It was bad.
Yeah. So I remember playing Siphon Filter after this, and I'd be like, I just couldn't play it because I was already used to this.
Was this they played? Oh yeah, they made a PSP version of Siphon Filter, didn't they?
I think they had 3
possibly.
I feel like I'm familiar with this series for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it wasn't a bad game. I'm sure it's actually a pretty good game. But the problem is that it was. I directly compared it to Metal Gear Solid, and it paled in comparison.
Yeah.
Well, to kind of sew up this conversation, Cam, I know that you might have even been a little bit more affected than me. Like, I enjoyed other Metal Gear games, but I think that you've been even more into them than I have going forward. How would you say that this first Metal Gear affected your taste in games?
Oh yeah, it completely altered my taste in games. Much like you, when you get the taste of awesome directing and voice acting, and you get the whole cinematic thing, and you get the whole the score together, and it's almost life changing, and you can't go back to playing bad video games. Kind of like what Trevor said. It almost spoils you. And I remember after this game trying to find a good game, because I had played games that were story driven before, like the Final Fantasies and stuff like that. But the addition of voice and cutscenes, and the cutscenes are different in this than I remember at first thinking like, oh, these don't look as good as Final Fantasy VII, because Final Fantasy VII it breaks away and it's a fully rendered, and it's separate from the game engine. But like Clark said, the addition of having it there in engine and not having to break away too much from it, it almost feels like there's like like it's just part of the game, and it changed how I looked at cinematic games forever. It made me almost spoiled, and like the next game I remember being super hyped for was Metal Gear Solid 2, and yeah.
All right. Well, we've sort of set the stage here. Let's talk about actually, like, when you sit down and you play this game, like, how does it play? Like, what is it? I was looking through some of the notes here, and we've been kind of constantly gushing about this game. So, maybe we'll start with UT here, because I know that you do have a few critiques on the gameplay in this game. So, why don't you kind of describe like what it is you're doing with this game, and then describe how you kind of feel about that today?
Yeah, so there's not really any one game that I could compare it to. There are a lot of games that have borrowed from it, but you're generally top down. It's a stealth game, right? We've already covered that. You're generally avoiding people's gazes. You have a little radar in your upper right-hand corner of your screen where you can see their fields of view, and so you're just kind of staying out of it. It's fairly simplistic, the stealth mechanics. I'm sure at the time it was pretty cool, but going back to it, it's fairly simplistic. So everything that I said was my experience with Twin Snakes, and I have played the PS1 version a time or two in the past. I never beat it though, because I go back and it's just not. It doesn't have the same magic because it wasn't what I started with. And this game is not a game that you're going to go back for the gameplay. The PS1 version in particular, the gameplay is okay, but it's really you're just trying to get through it to get to the rest of the story is what I found myself doing. And I had mentioned, so I got to the boiler room is where I'm at, and I got so annoyed trying to aim. It's so annoying trying to aim in the PS1 version of this game, and there's kind of some auto aiming that kind of helps you, but it's not very good. So the game is at its worst when it's an action game. It's at its most interesting when it's a stealth game, but both of those mechanics are fairly simplistic, here in 2025.
It's interesting you say that about the combat too. It just seems like most of the time you're aiming at something off screen.
Yeah, it's so annoying.
I'll interject here and say for this recording, I actually played through the Twin Snakes version because it had been a little while since I played that one. And I do have to say I appreciate the ability to aim in first-person mode in the Twin Snakes version.
It does make some things a lot easier.
As I was about to say, some of the boss fights and stuff like that were pretty easy because of this. Especially like Vulcan Raven the second time. That boss fight is super easy because all you have to do is go across the whole room, turn, and then just aim in first-person shoot mode until he comes across, and you can just shoot him. He doesn't. It's you don't have to use the mines or anything.
I was doing a sniper rifle for that.
No, I was just using my M9 because I was going through the whole game trying not to kill anybody. So that's another difference with this. I mean, we can talk about that later. Is that you have the tranquilizer guns in the in this version, which you didn't have in the PS1 version. So.
Cody, let's balance it out a little bit. Like, what do you think about how when you were playing through this game to get ready for this podcast, do you sort of agree or disagree with what Trevor's saying here? Like, is it a little bit clunky today?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. It is one of those things every time I go back to, especially the PS1 version, without kind of the first person view aiming, you kind of have to get into the mindset of MGS controls, because this is it was pretty unique at the time. I guess a lot of developers are trying to figure out how to use all of those buttons on a controller, and I was actually kind of impressed in future games. They really used all of the PlayStation hardware and the controls and all of the features of like the analog buttons on the PS2 and the pressure sensitivity and all of that stuff. Um, but it is pretty clunky. It's really hard. I mean, the fact that if you want to run and shoot at the same time, you have to somehow first hold square to pull up your gun and then start holding X. Then to fire your gun, you have to let go of square, but still hold X if you want to keep running. And so definitely clunky. Once you kind of get into the groove of things, it gets a little bit better. And I think they really figured it out in probably Metal Gear Solid 3. But it's really, I feel like once you get into the groove of the game and combat, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I'm looking at the radar 50, 60, 70% of the time.
That's what I was actually just gonna. My comment on this is that a lot of times it feels like a glorified Pac-Man game, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
little
that's
yellow
good.
dots are the ghosts, and they're
Yeah.
chasing you around or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little hard to get used to, but once you're kind of in that mindset, it's sort of like a tank control game in that way, where you have to just kind of realize it's old and it's a relic, but once you sort of get into that mindset, it's fine. Um, but I don't think running and gunning is the best part of this game.
Yeah.
So one thing that I really appreciated about this game when I first played it, I remember being so intimidated the first time I went through this game and being like, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to get past these guards? And I remember getting caught lots of times. But as you get used to the controls and the way it is, it seems like you get better and better every time you play. And by the time you get to the end of the game, you're like, I got this. This is easy. And you pretty much know. So at least there's that. I feel like by the time I was at the end of the game, there was really no challenges. That's like, okay, I'm just gonna pop these cameras with my gun. Although, can you do that in the PlayStation
No,
one?
you can't do that
Oh.
on the PlayStation one.
You can, yeah, I would pop the cameras with my gun, and then just tranquilize the guards with my M9 in first person. Maybe the Twin Snakes is just too easy.
Well, and you, also in Twin
That's
Snakes, you can drop down off the side of railings to
Yeah.
escape being.
You can do that, but I found myself not actually doing it that much because there was just easier ways to do it. But
I think that was one of those things that they brought a lot of stuff from MGS2 into Twin Snakes, and that was one of those things. But I feel like just there weren't any sequences or areas built for that, whereas in MGS2, that was one of the factors in building those environments. So.
Yeah.
At least you can get buff by doing some pull-ups. Twin Snakes.
I will say there. I pretty much agree with most of what you guys are saying here too. Just want to add my 2 cents into, because this is the first time that I had played this game probably in. It's got to be over 15 years, 15, 17 years or something. And I played the PS1 version, and there are some of the stealth elements that still really hold up today. Like, I'm surprised that they had included back in 1998. For instance, like the guards will see your footsteps in the snow and will follow you around if they see your footsteps. They'll hear you if you're on certain types of loud panels and things like that, and they'll come and investigate. And then also, like, you can knock on doors and like panels and things like that to get guards to come check out one area, and then you can zoom around the other way. So while yes, some of the action in the might be a little bit clunky, like all of these other elements, especially around the stealth, I found really engaging still today and really fun to do. And I will say that I had fun with most of the boss battles too. So sure, the controls were a little bit clunky, but even though those boss battles are still kind of action focused, they're a little bit carved out from the rest of the game. A lot different than fighting the genome soldiers. And I had a lot of fun figuring out the boss battles again because I didn't remember how to do some of the stuff in those boss battles, and it's really creative what they do.
I feel like the boss battles are the best part of the whole game.
Okay, let's open up this can of worms. Let's talk about the boss battles. So,
Okay.
T, what is your favorite boss battle in the game?
I probably have a pretty unoriginal opinion here when it comes to Psycho Mantis. That's probably, I don't know. I mean, maybe you guys have different opinions, but it's just so. I remember. I think I watched you guys play. It must have been the PS1 version because I remember him reading the memory card and him talking about how you guys had played Spyro, and I was losing my mind. I don't know how old I was. I was young, and I was like, "What?
How does he know that?"
Yeah.
He is reading my mind. Look at the controller; it's moving." So that's just a classic. Just like those memories alone, just like the first time you play Psycho Mantis is just like you're just like this is next level video gaming. Nothing will ever be the same again.
Yeah, I still remember trying to figure out how do you beat him because he knew exactly what you were gonna do. And I remember finally just like going to my codec and just asking everybody, and the colonel saying, "He's reading your mind. Try switching your controller ports." And I'm like, what? So, and that kind of blew my mind too, switching the controller port so he can't read your mind. That was pretty awesome.
Kojima's all about breaking the fourth wall. He doesn't hesitate to do that in this game.
Yeah.
I was curious, T, to see how you reacted to the in that boss battle where he blacks out the screen and just puts Hideo. Did that kind of mean anything to you? Did you remember that kind of image from back in the day?
You know, it came up. So I was playing it on the Steam Deck, and it came up, and I was like, "Oh, what just happened?" I like forgot that it did that, and I was like, "Man, it just glitched out."
Does that mean anything to you? Like, do you know, like does that mean anything?
Why it was black, why it was green?
Yeah,
Okay.
I do. I do recognize the screen. I mean, I you know, I was I guess I'm old enough to know, going to channel 3 for your system to come up. So I had seen it, yeah.
I see, because that's one of those things is kind of a relic of its time too, and that one.
That's a good point. Yeah,
That one
people wouldn't
totally
recognize
got
it.
me. Yeah, the way that he just kind of animated it, sort of flickers, then it's black.
Did you think that your TV was actually turning off?
I did. There back in the day, I specifically remember I was like, and this was also I didn't have a memory card. So I was really thinking
He couldn't read your mind then because you didn't have a memory card in there.
First time, no. So when I went back, I was like, "Holy moly, this is insane!" But
that's funny.
Kojima's really messing with young little Cody, thinking he's turning off his memory cardless PS1, scarred for life.
Exactly, it was just the perfect situation.
Talk about real true PTSD right there.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
That's awesome.
Well, I mean, yes, I think if you want to talk about difficulty, when I got to this boss battle in this playthrough, I had not picked up the heat vision goggles up at this point, and so I didn't know what I thought. I was like, well, how do I do this? Because there's a part where he goes like invisible and like flies around the room and then appears. And I eventually
same.
Yeah, I eventually got it, but I was like, oh, I guess I need to go get the heat goggles. Yeah, that's what they are, heat goggles.
Thermal goggles.
Yeah, did you just use the cigarette part at the lasers then? Before then?
Yeah. I remembered that. I remember that you could use the cigarette smoke to see the lasers going up and down.
Yeah. I had the goggles at that point too.
Yeah. Cody, what about you? Do you have a favorite boss battle?
Honestly, same. Psycho Mantis always stuck with me. I just remember later on playing like Symphony of the Night, and that was the game he read my mind about. He was like, "You like Castlevania games, don't you?" And I was like, "Oh my god, how did you know that?" And then all of the other things, it was just I think the lead up to was a big thing, just with you're trying to catch up with Meryl, and you're trying to kind of isolate her, and then all the guards disappear, music starts. You're supposed to go to the commander's room, but who's the commander? Um,
And then it makes you beat up
even
Meryl.
yeah, and even before that, I don't know. It's a pretty well known Easter egg, but leading up to that, when you're in kind of I think B2 of that area or B1, every time you go into first person, it's kind of that green um, uh, image, but it's from Meryl's point of view, looking at you, and that was another thing that kind of just tripped me out, youngin. So I think the lead up just really kind of set the pace for it, and then his whole preamble with the memory card reading and how he moves your controller with telekinesis. I was just kind of all in. The vibes were there, so that always sticks out to me. I guess Liquid Snake and the Hind D for personal reasons, because, like I said, that's as far as I got without a memory card. So when I finally got a memory card and I beat that boss battle, I was again in like uncharted territory. So I was super excited to keep
Man, I just love this type of thing. Like this, it feels like in later Metal Gear games, Hideo Kojima needs to like sort of explain how like these weird things are happening. Like what are these powers coming from? And it's always like
Say
machines or something.
nanomachines. Yeah.
Yeah, nanomachines. But I just love. I mean, it's sort of like Indiana Jones, right? Like there's just a little element of the supernatural in this like kind of grounded world, and it just worked so perfectly for me.
Yeah. No, I absolutely. I think that was one of the things that was intriguing. Um, just all around it, with Psycho Mantis, and then of course it's kind of the classic action hero where Solid Snake is just surviving all kinds of crazy stuff. You've got a person who can perfectly clone other people. You have this weird like um, DNA targeting virus that's injected nanomachines. Like, there's a lot of weird stuff that you just kind of like accept in the Metal
Yeah.
Gear Solid world.
It's so iconic, though. I was just thinking about how I don't. I mean, none of the other bosses stick out to me the same way that these ones do. I was just thinking about Metal Gear Solid 5. Like nothing, none of those characters come close to holding a candle to these interactions. There's just something so cool, and I think it's a little bit of nostalgia, but I also think that there's something really unique and iconic about
Yeah, and
those
this
interactions.
this is treading a little bit on like the overall story, but the way that the story presents these characters, like even when like you're infiltrating, like you're getting the read down from the colonel, right? And he introduces all of the members of Foxhound to you as you're going through. So you actually know a little bit about every one of them as you're going in, and you're probably thinking in the back of your mind like, oh, these are people I'm going to have to fight, and they're just such big personalities in the way it's presented in this game. And just the way that it shakes up the gameplay when you're in the battles with them. They're just all so unique and also different. Man, they're just such a big standout to me. Cam, did you have a favorite one?
Well, I mean, Psycho Mantis is probably the classic one, but I'm gonna shout out a couple that I thought were really standout. The ninja boss fight is pretty awesome because you're in like an office setting, and it's kind of unique in that as you move around the office, like papers are flying everywhere, monitors are exploding, and it's just a setting you don't see a boss fight in very often. And I thought that was very unique. And then you have to use chaff grenades to immobilize him to attack him, and I thought that and then leading up to that, you see this super badass ninja. There's like there's no way I'm gonna be able to beat that dude. He just like murders like 6 guards going up before that. You're like, and especially in the Twin Snakes version, it is very stylized. It's very crazy like. So I thought that battle was awesome, and then fighting the actual Metal Gear Rex is pretty awesome in the scope and how big it is, and just the enormity of all of it. I thought, I mean, it's not terribly hard, but it's pretty cool in how you execute and just the enormity of the whole fight. So
Some really good points there, man. Shadow Moses IT is not going to be very happy after Snake's done with his mission. Huh?
No.
But your point on fighting Metal Gear, I was watching some retrospectives, and they were showing like the original Metal Gear battles that you do in the MSX and the MSX2 versions of Metal Gear, and they're really like anticlimactic. Like in the MSX version of Metal Gear, you put you bomb the feet of Metal Gear, and it's just standing there, like not even mobile at all. I think the second one, there's a little bit of mobility, like it goes up and down. But like you said, like I don't know if there's had been anything like this. I don't remember a boss battle like this, but like full 3D, big old mech dinosaur, essentially, like in there, like stomping on you, and oh man, it was awesome.
He even roars like a dinosaur. That's that's attention to detail. I mean, Otacon, who designed Metal Gear, that was he paid attention. You could tell he loved his mecha. So
and it starts a whole. It's almost like a fourth act, right? That boss battle starts. It's even that boss battle comes in 2 or 3 phases with a pretty important cutscene in the middle, which leads directly into even crazier cutscenes, directly into a boss battle, and then right into the ending sequence. It just, as soon as you start fighting Rex, it just seems like it's the culmination of everything that's been going on.
Yeah. And the way he weaves story into that boss fight too is pretty cool. Because Gray Fox shows up, the ninja, and he is part of that boss fight. And Gray Fox is just going at him, and he loses. Let's see, he loses an arm.
I will say, like, I remember thinking that was so cool as a kid, but as an adult, I was just like, it's a little bit of like remember that line in The Incredibles? Oh, you caught me monologuing. Like, there's just like all this action is getting broken up by these huge monologues, and like basically, Liquid Snake is letting him monologue while he's got his leg on him so he can finish what he's saying. And then when he's done, then he squishes him.
Well, the one thing that I did think was pretty cool is that point where you can destroy Rex, but he has the ninja like pushed up against a wall or something like that, and you're getting ready to shoot him. He's like, and every time you go to shoot, it says, "I can't do it. I can't shoot." And you're like, I don't care, just shoot.
Yeah.
T, did 10-year-old T really identify with Otacon and being really scared and peeing your pants when you're going through some of this stuff?
No way. 10-year-old T was all about Solid Snake.
Yeah, you're a big boy.
Yeah, I remember playing on my trampoline and I was infiltrating the facility. So I was a big boy. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, what a cool game. We've talked about sort of the highlights of the boss battles. Maybe we'll just do a quick nods here to maybe if there were some boss battles or things that you didn't enjoy that didn't work as well for you. T.
I think I didn't like my interactions with Sniper Wolf, either of them. I think that for me exemplified everything that I didn't like about the game.
Was it the diazepam, like having to like go into your menus and eat the diazepam or whatever while you're trying to snipe?
Yeah, it felt like there was a lot of timing involved and it wasn't very rewarding, and like the first interaction especially is kind of bland. You're just like, in that long corridor. Yeah, I just didn't like that, especially just because, like I said already, like that kind of gameplay, like that fine-tuned aiming is like my least favorite part of this game. And so for me, those it's a small gripe, but that was my least favorite interaction was Sniper Wolves.
As far as the Sniper Wolf battle, the first one there, I don't mind the sniping. In fact, I kind of like sniping a lot. But I just thought it was kind of dumb that you had to go back,
you had to
and
go all the
you
way
had to go
back?
all the way
Yeah.
back to get the sniper rifle. And I remember, after you fight Psycho Mantis, I'm like, oh, I need to go get the sniper rifle, and I kept on trying to go back, and
they'd stop you.
and yeah, Meryl's like, you can't go that way. We got to go this way now. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I need a sniper rifle, but Meryl wouldn't let me.
I'm gonna need one for your sake. I'm gonna need one.
Yes, but nope, you got to leave her bleeding out there to go find a sniper rifle.
Yeah, that part. Yeah, going back and forth is really annoying.
Yeah, backtracking. I have that here in my notes. Like backtracking in this game, I think they do an okay job, like interspersing some like story moments while you're backtracking. So it's maybe not as bad as it be in some games, but it's still a little bit annoying in this game.
I feel like you're running errands.
Did you guys use the box and shipping truck trick at all?
I did a little bit.
Doesn't save you a ton of time, to be honest. It's really only the snowfield, or the not the snowfield, but the.
Did you know that,
You
T, that you could take the box? Because if you look at the boxes in your menu, it'll
Yeah, it
say
says
like
and two or whatever. Yeah.
and it'll take you to the different trucks. So there's like the truck at the beginning, there's the truck in like the disposal area, and then there's the truck where you fight Sniper Wolf the last time.
So what do? You get the box like by the
You
truck
get the
or
box,
something?
you wear it, and you go in the truck, and then the truck will have started to move, and it'll take you to
The mini
the
cutscene too, where they're like, "Oh, guess we have to take this shipment to the heliport."
yeah.
And it's an old school style of fast travel, although it's not very fast. Doesn't save a ton of time.
I forgot about
That's
that.
funny. Yeah, I didn't realize that you do that. I mean, they brought that back at least in 5. That's funny. I didn't never realize that was like a nod. That's funny.
Well, I mean, that's something you could do even in the original game, although if you just went into any truck, it would just start moving in the original Metal Gear game.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So I liked the first boss battle where you killed Decoy Octopus without having to do anything.
Yeah, this is the easiest one.
That is a good one.
Now, technically, the first boss battle is against Revolver Ocelot, and I remember
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember being a little frustrated with that one when back in the day when I was younger, because he had those bouncing bullets, like the bullets bounce.
Why can't I bounce the bullets? Yeah.
Yeah, he could bounce the bullets, but once you get used to the pattern and everything, it's not hard. But I remember tripping those wires several times and getting the
poor old president of Arms Tech getting blown up.
Yes.
Or Kenneth Baker.
Yeah, I probably if I played that for the first time now, I probably wouldn't like it as much. I just remember playing that as a kid and being like, "Wow, I've really done something. I've become a man. I beat that boss." So I think that kind of stuck in my mind. But yeah, it is annoying now that I'm thinking about it. Like it is that aiming, you're running and aiming and trying not to run in the middle of the room.
And both the Vulcan Raven boss fights were okay. They weren't the greatest, but I think the tank there at the beginning was probably a little bit better.
If you don't know what you're doing with the tank, you just get exploded like 5 times in a row. You got to make sure that you like talk to everyone to know that you need to throw the chaff grenades so that you don't get exploded.
Fortunately, I remembered all that when I played it this time. I didn't have any problem, but so.
My least favorite boss battle is, I think some people really like it, but I didn't like it. The fist fight on top of Rex. It's really like trial and error. At least it was for me. Maybe I'm just not as good as you guys are, but like I probably died about 6 or 7 times until I fully got his pattern down.
I wonder if they made it easier for the Twin Snakes version, because I did it the first time.
It's difficult. Cody, am I misremembering, or am I just bad? Like, did you find it difficult?
I have found in this recent playthrough that the Rex fight was harder than I remember, and that Liquid fight on top. I probably died about 8 times before I took Liquid out, and it was half of those were kind of falling off, the other half was just mistiming everything and taking too much damage from him.
Interesting. You were watching when I was streaming. Did you watch that part where I did the fight, or did you come in
think
after
I
that?
jumped in the tunnel escape sequence.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because that was I did it the first time and didn't have to do any trial error. I wonder if they just made it easier. So
I think it is more of the. I don't know exactly, but I just remember one thing that made it a little bit hard in the PS1 version is you've only got kind of the 8-way controls. You can really only run, north, south, east, west, and then diagonal, which kind of made it hard to dodge his punches and kicks in that limited amount of space. And maybe it was just a little more responsive in the GameCube version, or maybe they just made it easier. I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't like. It was more like a quick time event a lot of times because if you like tried to punch him at the wrong times, then he would automatically counter you. So you had to know when you could really strike and when you couldn't.
And it seems like he would always punish you if you threw a full combo. But if you just kind of pepper him with like a jab and don't do the full 3 hit, sometimes that kind of works. But
Yeah,
it's still
do the 1-2 and then you back away while he tries to counter. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Anyway, that was kind of annoying until you figure it out. Once you figure it out, like a lot of things, it's not too hard. But
Well, and Cam, yeah. So Cam brought up. I'll just say one more thing about gameplay. That there is a lot of trial and error in this game, and if you don't like, if you didn't, if you're playing through this for the first time, there would be so many things that would not be intuitive to you. That you need to an item that you need to go get to get past this one point, or yeah, like the tank fight, your trap grenades, and so you spend a lot of time calling these random codec numbers that you had to have had written down somewhere, or you're just a bunch of trial and error. And so that was frustrating at times. And I very quickly turned to a guide just so I could get through it faster, knowing that I could spend a lot of time like looking around for the next thing that I was supposed to do.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that trial and error really extends the gameplay out quite a bit in this game. I think back in 1998, that was for the better, right? It was really cool discovering the way to do all these things, and when you died, it wasn't that big of a deal. You would go back and you explore and you figure it out, and it worked well. But to your point, T, I think you're right that we don't have as much patience today for
There's
that
a
kind of
couple
thing.
things that in this latest playthrough I was reminded of, kind of on that same note, where if you don't get the SOCOM suppressor, that makes it a lot harder. But the suppressor is at a very early point in the game where most people are just still trying to figure things out. And for me, I didn't even realize you could hop at the back of the truck for the longest time. And then the other thing that I realized too is that you don't get is it Nastasia or Natasha Romanenko? I can never remember, but I don't think you're directly introduced to her, or you don't get like a triggered cutscene where she's introduced to you. I think she's mentioned to you, and the colonel says, "Hey, you should call her." But I don't think you're really forced to until quite a ways into the game. But looking back now, she actually gives you a lot of really good advice. She's the one that reminds you to use chaff grenades in the first Vulcan Raven fight. She tells you to use, um, I think, Stinger missiles or mines or something against Vulcan Raven second time. But she gives you a lot of really useful advice. Um, but if you don't kind of seek her out, it takes a while for you to get that info.
Yeah, you got to really be using those resources in this game, or you're gonna have a hard time.
Yep.
I will say too, like just to build off of everything we've been kind of saying about the gameplay, like this Shadow Moses facility is like so densely packed with and so tightly curated. It's amazing, like how like when you think about and you just kind of go back through Shadow Moses in your mind, it's not really that big, but it feels big because of how they've expertly put it together and just filled and crafted. In fact, I remember there's a time in Metal Gear Solid 4 where you go back to Shadow Moses and you like go through it in just like a couple minutes and you're done.
Yeah, it feels tiny, and I remember it being really tiny. I'm like, this isn't how it was before.
When you remove all the cutscenes and codec conversations,
Yeah.
it's a relatively small map.
Yeah.
let's jump into the story portion of this. Now, we've been talking and touching on parts of the story here, but let's dive a little bit more deep into this specific story. So, if we wanted to, we could open up a whole tome and be here for hours and hours talking about Metal Gear lore and story. But it so happens that this is probably, outside of the MSX versions of Metal Gear, this is probably the most streamlined and coherent of the Metal Gear Solid stories.
Which is wild to say. That's a wild thing to say.
Yeah. And so let's break it down a little bit here. Cody, let's start with you. So, like, what is like the 30,000-foot view of this story, and then we can start picking at like different parts of the story.
Sure. You want me to give the
yeah, like what is the premise? Like, what gets you on Shadow Moses? Why are you there?
So you play as Solid Snake, a grizzled war veteran, a legendary hero, brought out of retirement because a group of terrorists from your former squad have a nuclear warhead, and they're threatening to launch them if they don't get, number one, the corpse of Big Boss, I think, returned to them.
The remains,
and then I think there's a dollar amount. I think $1 billion is what they're asking, something like that. And
nice round number.
Yeah, exactly. You are reluctantly pulled out of retirement from your days of racing sled dogs in Alaska to come and single-handedly dismantle this whole operation. And enemies and items are procured on site. You're sent there naked, basically.
Yeah.
So I had a question about this point. So he was in the same squad as all these guys, right? How did he not know them?
Well, that's the thing, is that he was in part of Foxhound, but Foxhound is different now. Yeah, it's not the same Foxhound.
Completely different.
Yeah. He was in Foxhound, but it's not the same.
Different.
These were not members of Foxhound when he was in
it. So he'd never met Liquid before this.
Nope.
The only person
I find most unbelievable.
I guess you could say he met the Cyborg Ninja beforehand, but he didn't really.
Yeah. But he didn't know that.
Not at first.
Yep.
Another thing I just wanted to add to the overview of the story is that Foxhound actually led a rebellion of all the troops and stuff that were already there. So there's an active rebellion going on.
Yeah.
There too. So.
And you sort of learn a little bit of this through like Kenneth Baker and I think Merrill as you're talking to them. You learn that like, oh, this is not just like a disposal site of nuclear waste. Like, they're actually actively prototyping this weapon here. And so just like a good espionage story, things aren't always what they seem, right? So you get on there and T, like, they couldn't have chosen a more gullible person than Snake, right? There's a reason why they chose Snake.
Yeah, Snake, for whatever reason, just takes this all at face value. He's like, yep, okay, I'll come out of retirement. Why not?
I'm going to let this person put this shot in me that does who knows what.
That's kind of realistic, actually. That's kind of realistic. That happens.
Yeah, so you've been in the military. Like, you don't know what they put in your butt, right?
Oh, absolutely not. Did I tell you that story? You get a peanut butter shot. We called it the peanut butter shot because it's a thick gauge needle, and it feels like sludge. Like, it feels like sludge is going inside of your body, and you have a bruise where they put that needle for days after, and like nobody knew what it was. We all kind of thought it was a cocktail to like boost your immune system, but it's like nobody had any idea.
And now you're a genome soldier.
You got nanomachines in you and everything.
I'll tell you what, it's pretty disappointing being on this side of the genome. It's nothing to write.
You say now your vision is like limited to like 45 degrees and like 15 feet out.
Yeah, I can sometimes hear people knocking. I'm like, huh? What?
You can recognize footprints in the snow, but you can't detect anything more than 15 feet in front of you.
Yeah, I've followed this footprint.
They could have just made you the vector for a dangerous virus that you just pass along to all the enemies.
Yeah, see this. Yeah, this game was prescient, as all of the Metal Gear Solids were.
Yeah,
and so
Yeah, I was gonna say like my first impression of this story as I was going through it as an adult right now, and like that was I was just kind of incredulous in how like naive Snake is through this whole thing. Like you said, he just takes everything at face value, and like basically he knows the Colonel is lying to him, and he just doesn't like really question him ever. Like he's like, "Are you lying to me, Colonel? I this is above my pay grade," and then he just doesn't question it anymore and just keeps going.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. Yeah, Baker like reveals to him that the Colonel knows everything, and then he calls him out, and then that's it. That's like the only plot point that we have. Yeah.
All right, Cam. So Snake gets out there. He was born yesterday, but he quickly some things start to go awry. What's the first sign that things aren't quite what they seem when he gets out there?
Well, one of the first places that you're told to go is to find the DARPA chief, and you sneak into where the DARPA chief is, and you have a conversation with him, and then as you're talking with him, he has a heart attack and dies. And you're like, what is going on here? So that's the first thing that you're like, well, he just croaked here. And then as you move along and you find Meryl and Meryl leaves, and then you go and you fight the next boss, you're trying to find Kenneth Baker, the arms tech president, and he mysteriously dies the exact same way. And each time they die, they say something to the effect as, "Oh, those bastards! Why they actually did it? I didn't think they were actually going to do it." And so you're just like, what is going on here? So that's your first.
Snake, like a good soldier, just keeps pressing on, like the tool he is.
He does learn his lesson, though, interestingly enough, because he had seen that happen twice. When you talk to Meryl in the bathroom, he has kind of a funny line of like, "Okay, we're done talking about all of the things that have happened so far. Are you feeling okay?
Yeah.
You're gonna have a heart attack on me, are you?"
Yeah.
She's like, "What?"
Yeah. And that's kind of cool thing about this game is that it covers a lot of serious topics, but it's always tongue in cheek. Yeah, always somewhere in between, which is kind of cool. It's very Kojima.
It is important to know that Meryl is the Colonel's niece, and that's what he tells you. You need to get my niece and get her safely out of there. And she's been detained at the beginning because she didn't go along with the rebellion with all the other soldiers.
Yeah. So we have this whole story here where you're sent there on one pretense, and that that storyline does kind of go through, but you realize that you're there for so much more. But then you end up having to stop the nuclear launch. Well, you actually end up being used to launch the nuke, which, again, he was born yesterday.
Spoilers.
So, yes. In classic fashion, just like in Indiana Jones and those type of movies, like if Snake actually does nothing, then no nuke is going to get launched. So if you really do nothing, then it should just roll credits and everything's good, right?
So if you want to get into the nitty gritty here, in order to launch the missile, the terrorists needed 2 passwords,
yes,
and they
needed to get it.
They couldn't get it from the DARPA chief, but the DARPA chief had died, so they used Decoy Octopus to impersonate the DARPA chief, and that's so when you.
Let's. I want to talk a little. I want to pull on that thread a little bit because I don't know, Trevor or Cody. Why does Decoy Octopus seem to like need to take the blood of the people he's copying? Why does he have to do that?
No clue. Kojima.
I thought that was the weirdest thing. Is it just because they wanted to make him die from Fox die? Is just like a story?
Oh
I
man,
think it had something to do with that, or a way to allow evil doing nanomachines to enter his body.
Well, I was gonna say, like, to me, it was like, well, why? Because he goes on to explain, like, he's such a thorough person. He copies him down to the blood. I'm like, what?
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, well, why? Like, what is the reason why he transplants the person's blood into them? But the only thing I can think of is they just did that as a way to explain why Foxdie kills him.
He's one of those characters that I always kind of forget about because Psycho Mantis has a face in a boss battle, Sniper Wolf and Vulcan Raven, right? Decoy Octopus is mostly sort of mentioned. You don't actually see him in action.
You see a profile picture of him at the beginning of the game, and that's all you see of him.
Yep.
Well, you see the back of his head in like a flashback cutscene, like when he's saying like, "You idiot, you killed him," and like there's like three people standing there, and you can see like the back of someone's head. You're just supposed to assume that's Decoy Octopus.
I'm surprised that in all of the prequels they haven't done some sort of nod to Octopus. I'm really surprised that they didn't, like, of all the characters that they foreshadowed after the fact in the prequels, that wasn't somebody that they ever fleshed out. Like, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to point out though is because the president had died and Decoy,
the president of Arms Tech, or
the president of Arms. Oh yeah, I'm talking about the DARPA chief. They couldn't get his code, so the only way that they could end up actually launching the nuke is taking the key cards and doing the override. But they tricked Snake into thinking that they had already got the codes and that he needed to put the card keys in to stop the launch.
Yeah.
So
again, because he was born yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the questions I had during this last playthrough. Is once you know the Master Miller twist, you're kind of going back and I just had a closer eye on everything that he was saying. Yep. And I actually called him a lot more in this playthrough than I did before, just knowing what happens. And why is he so helpful throughout the entire game?
Well,
is it because he's leading him?
Yeah, I guess that's the only thing I can think of. It doesn't make sense to me either.
Yeah,
and a lot about Alaskan field mice from him. So
yeah.
Well, and he's apparently calling you while he's flying in his hind D too, because he takes off in his hind D, and then you're crawling through the vents, and he's talking to you while he's in his hind D.
Yeah,
true.
Oh man, yeah, it's kind of funny, like the way that they portray Miller in the prequel games. It's just I don't know, like you see that Miller and you see this Miller and you're like,
well, yeah, this isn't the real Miller. Yeah.
But Snake,
that Miller has a crutch.
Snake is fooled. Snake is fooled.
I was gonna say, good enough for Snake.
He's like, hey, you got your leg back. It seems to be working pretty good. You're looking healthy.
So, I mean, we've kind of been picking up different parts of the overall story here. Suffice to say, we already talked about it. Like the codes get put in. Well, the key cards initiate the launch, and that's when you destroy Metal Gear, defeat your twin brother, which that's another part of the story that's just kind of a personal part of the story for Snake and Liquid, and then you get off the island. But speaking of Snake and Liquid, there's lots of like little individual stories, like little vignettes. For each of the Foxhound, you'll get a long monologue, soliloquy about all of their histories. You get it for Liquid, you get it for like all of these different characters, even some of the people that you only hear on your radio. On your codec, you get some background from them too. So let's talk about that kind of story building. How did that work for you? Let's start with UT.
Yeah, it's kind of a feature of this game that there's like a lot of environmental storytelling, but I will also say that that's one of my least favorite parts of the game was how much time I spent in the codec just being talked at. And their pictures are cool, but like there's just not a lot going on there. And so they're telling these really interesting backstories in like the least interesting way possible through the codec a lot of the times. But as for like, yeah, when you're getting the background stories of these characters, Psycho Mantis it's a heavy story. So is Sniper Wolf's. Like they're talking about like the plight of the Kurds, and it's like this is like pretty deep, pretty deep stuff that like most people wouldn't be aware of. Like these global issues that Kojima's just like plugging in here as an aside. Most people wouldn't even like realize that like what they're talking about, but it's
Yeah,
a big deal.
like as a 16-year-old kid, like I maybe knew some of these buzzwords, but for the most part, I was pretty clueless on a lot of these geopolitical politics. This was kind of my first introduction to that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a lot. I mean, nukes, yeah, nukes. You got terrorists. You got former Soviet stuff. Um, yeah, it's really cool. He doesn't pull any punches with that stuff, which is really engaging. It's
Yeah,
definitely like a huge highlight of this game that like the stuff that it talks about is relevant, and that's a huge draw.
yeah,
I don't know how well it would work today, but I think it's impressive kind of looking back because you have this game with cyborg ninjas and levitating, um, like Psycho Mantis. But then he kind of tells a story about nuclear disposal and, all of these geopolitical things, like you said. And even, he's throwing some live action footage in there with some quotes about how many containers of um, you know nuclear waste is out there. I think it is kind of impressive to take this kind of sort of semi-serious spy action movie, but it's also got this kind of ridiculous anime style stuff going on, but he's still able to kind of get you to think about these heavy topics.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Cam, are any of these vignettes stand out to you? I know you have a soft spot for Otacon, right?
They do, but the
Although
one
you
that
like his story, you like his story more in MGS2 when you learn that
oh yeah,
backstory.
yeah. We're not going to talk about that. Remember?
Yes. Sorry.
The most interesting backstory, and it's probably even the most relevant to the whole story, is Naomi and the relationship with her brother, Gray Fox, aka the ninja. Because a lot of the story has moved, the plot has moved along because of her hatred of Snake, her vengeance of what she thinks is because Snake killed her brother Gray Fox in the second game. Is that correct? Second game? I've never actually played it.
The second game, yep. I saw
In the
it.
second game.
Yeah, I watched a retrospective on that one. So yeah, you do. You fight Gray Fox in that.
Frank Yeager in Zanzibar Land.
So basically, her whole career there with the government and getting in with this whole mission is just to get revenge on Snake, and because he killed her brother, and then the crazy twist about this whole thing is that you find out that Gray Fox actually killed her parents and then felt bad for her.
Yeah, and then Snake chickens out and doesn't tell her, even though Gray Fox wanted him to.
Yeah,
and along within that storyline, you learn that one of the most critical events the entire series happens in a briefing in this game when Naomi gives you the shot that you find out later contains fox dye.
Yep, that's like right when you come out of like the tutorial area, you come up on the elevator platform, you get in that first call, and she's like, "Yeah, Snake hits on her and basically says, yeah, you gave me that shot or whatever." Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and you could, if I remember right, you either see it happen or they're discussing the poke as it's happening in those briefings in the main menu.
I think in Twin Snakes there's like a bonus bonus cutscenes that you can watch them coming to his house in Alaska, and I don't think that's the thing in the PS1 version.
Oh, really?
Because I remember watching those clips, which I imagine was probably in Twin Snakes. Like it's like a from like a video camera perspective, and like they're all there, and like you see her give him the shot at one point.
Oh.
It's just like a bonus thing.
Yeah, in Twin Snakes they expanded out so you it's like fully rendered 3D space, and you kind of see the briefing from that camera angle. But in the PS1 version, it's just almost still images that they're kind of talking over. And a couple of those briefings, you can flip the camera to a different angle, but it's still mostly still images. But there's actually a lot in those briefings that are pretty important to this game and a lot of other games, but they're just totally missable. You can completely skip them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Snake is quite the ladies' man in this game. You hit on at least 3 women. Cody, are you team
I'd
Meryl,
say
Mei Ling, or Naomi?
He's
don't
Team
forget
Otacon. Otacon.
always Team Otacon.
Otacon, he knows a lot about love.
Yeah.
That is true.
No,
One of the
he's trying to
all-time
learn about it.
Yeah. Snake
one of the
guides
best
him.
romances, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, is there really just we've talked about the story in general. We've dove in parts. Is there just really anything else that you guys want to comment on the story before we move on?
I'll say one thing that this game, yeah, is the most streamlined outside of, I guess, the original two, and that's saying a lot because this game does go off the rails at a few times, and it starts this Metal Gear Solid tradition where it references something from a previous game. It might have been something that was even super obscure, and so you're like, okay, like I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna finally like get this whole story, and it really is like a hallmark of the Metal Gear Solid series that going back to play the games to understand the story is never as rewarding as you want it to be. Like it never feels like there's a grander plan. It's just some random thing that happened. I had like the Metal Gear Solid collection on the PS3. It was like all of them, and I'm like, I'm gonna play all of the games finally. And I started and I played the first like 10 minutes of Metal Gear like one, like the very first one, and I was like, I can't do this. Like this is not worth it. Like I'm just gonna read a synopsis of this game.
That's
Which
a
they
pretty
actually
obtuse
give
game.
you in which they give you in these games. You could,
Yep.
I think it's previous mission, and I thought that was kind of a cool thing too. Starting this out where you can just simply read about the previous games, and I think as you read one, it unlocks the next one, or maybe that was in the second game. But there was a lot
Yeah, is
of
that's
story.
cool. I didn't realize that. I didn't. If
Yeah,
that's the
it's
thing
right
at this
there.
point, I didn't
Yeah,
realize that.
if you open up the PlayStation version, there's like the like you said previous missions in
I think
there.
it's
And
under special or options or something, and yeah, it's a
yeah, it was
pretty good.
really quite the package. Like they put a lot of care into like putting this game together, like including stuff like that.
On the story, though, before we get off that, I do just want to talk about some of the movie influences, which I
Oh,
have
because
not
there's a
really.
lot. Yes.
There's a lot, and as I learned later in life, Kojima is a huge movie buff, which is pretty cool. But I never really I didn't realize it until later in life or subsequent playthroughs. The big one that stands out to me is Die Hard. You're literally crawling in vents. You're sometimes on the radio with these terrorists. You're kind of like a one-man army sneaking around.
Yeah.
Um, that was just the big one I hadn't really realized until it hit me, and then I couldn't unsee it. Um, uh, there's so many in there too that I'm not thinking of. Another one that stands out is
Escape
like
from New York for sure. Because I mean,
Escape from New
Snake
York. Yeah,
Plissken. Yeah.
that's one. A little bit of Enemy at the Gates, I think, with some of the sniper sequences.
The
Yeah,
Twin Snakes version is definitely heavily has influences from the Matrix. There's a lot of like the bullet time and him Snake dodging bullets.
Yeah.
The other
I
big
didn't
one that
really like that too much about Twin Snakes, but
no, I'm with you. The other one though that I kind of saw a little bit more of this playthrough was Predator with the cyborg ninja and the stealth, and the room right before the office was definitely heavy on the Predator vibes.
mm-hmm.
But I don't know, it's cool, and I think a lot of that stuff just was expanded on in later games. A lot more less than subtle movie references here and there, like the Snake Plissken thing.
Yeah. I mean, you can see it, right? Like, this is really the first time where Kojima had the tools he really needed to actually tell a cinematic story, right? Like, he didn't have the tools before, and this is the first time he was unleashed, and he does, a good job within the constraints, and then he gets more unleashed as the game series goes on, and a little bit more unhinged as well.
Yeah.
I do want to give a shout out to how the game ends because it's kind of what led to my hype of seeing where he was going to take the
In a
series going on.
post credit scene.
Yeah, you got a post-credit scene where you find out that the true, like, actual villain of the... You think it's Liquid, but it wasn't really Liquid. It was Revolver Ocelot. He's, like, the main brains behind the thing, along with, spoilers, the President of the United States, who is Snake's secret brother.
Yeah. I remember it dropped the bomb, and I was so pumped for it, and we won't get into it too much, but I feel like that wasn't really totally paid off in the second game like it should have.
Yeah.
There's probably 3 or 4 main villains in this. Obviously, Liquid. Find out later he wasn't really pulling the strings. I still feel like Naomi's the true villain, though, of MGS1.
Probably.
Well, and I was trying to remember the plot of 4 because she features pretty heavily in 4, and yeah, we'll cut it off there. Can't talk about that.
4 is crazy.
Yeah, we're gonna derail.
Yeah. All right. Well, we could probably talk for another 2 hours about the story. We'll call it good there, though. Honestly, for me, it was like the biggest step forward in video games I had ever seen at the time, and that's not like taking it lightly. Like I had been, I had played through some narrative games, but none were as well told or as tightly told as this game was. Let's move into a discussion. Let's kind of combine these two together. I have a section in here for graphics and then also music and sound design. Let's just go ahead and kind of mash it together and just sort of pick out the things that we like and didn't like about these things. Cam, maybe why don't you kick off the discussion? Like, what do you think of? Let's start it with like the sound design and music design of this game. What do you think of it?
I mean, the sound design is excellent. No complaints. Like all the sound effects and the voice acting and the music, all top notch. All great.
Well, and I would say it's like top notch, excellent, but I think it even goes to, like, transcends and goes to a level above to like iconic. Like, who doesn't know like the alert sound? Like, if I say, yeah, everyone knows what the alert sound sounds like, right?
My wife watches like a YouTube channel that I don't even know. It's like some Korean YouTube channel, and they use that sound like every time there's like something surprising happen. And I'm like, they just stole that from Metal Gear Solid.
I was gonna say, I don't know if you dads have noticed this too, but my daughters watch YouTube, and there's even the smaller kid channels where they're just no dialogue or anything like that. Any of that sort of surprised face, it comes with that sound. And I always tell my daughters, like, that's from Metal Gear, and they're like, whatever, Dad.
Shouting in your corner with your cane.
Yeah.
Even some small things like the wolves howling in the distance and stuff like that that add the ambiance. It's all great. So
well, and like it is the details in the small things, like the codec little chirp, like when you get a call, walking in the snow, like even like when you pulled the goggles up and you zoom in and out and you hear like the sound of it zooming in and out, like it's just all well done.
Yeah, even I always remember too. It starts out really good, even when you push start. That really loud, full gunshot sound. You even hear the casing hit the ground too. So I think there's just a lot of care and probably a little bit of gun nut, weapons and ammo nerd in there too, because you get a lot of info on
definitely.
Those guns. A lot of the sounds are really full and loud, and they just kind of hit you. But yeah, I always say this is Metal Gear Solid and Mega Man are like winners in my what are my phone notification sounds going to be? Of course, now it's always on vibrate, but like there are so many good ones. The codec sound, the alert sound, the snake sound.
Yeah.
There's so many.
Mailing, screaming, snake!
Yep.
Yeah, although screaming with a different voice actor in the Twin Snakes version, which
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I wanted to
take away the Chinese accent.
I did want to talk about the voice acting itself a little bit. I listened to a series of interviews that Game Informer did with David Hayter, Debbie Mae West, all the big players, and um, they were all. It was kind of like a small operation. Um, Doing that interview, they were all just kind of called in to do this video game from Konami. But they kind of recorded in somebody's house somewhere out in California,
Oh,
and
really?
they were all in kind of a small room that had this house had kind of been converted into sort of a mini sound stage. But it was a really kind of small, uh, just a really small, humble operation, and they apparently kind of bonded there on the set because it was so small, um, and then I guess later when they did Twin Snakes, um, they couldn't use those first ones, or they chose not to use them because it was cheaper to just hire those same actors again rather than, I guess, license the rights, the PS1 version. But
So
I would
weird.
definitely recommend checking out. It's a Game Informer interview. I want to say it's about 10 years old now, but um, they spoke directly to Solid Snake, Meryl, Naomi, Campbell. It's really interesting. You learn a
Yeah.
lot of tidbits in there.
Obviously,
David Hayter's are-
the best name is Cam Clark, right?
Yeah.
Because Cam
Let's
Clark
let's
who
liquid.
does Liquid.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Perfect.
And you guys know that David Hayter was like a producer on like the original X-Men movie, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think he's really cool. I do not understand why they didn't get him to play in 5 parts 1 and 2.
Neither does he.
Because he's so
I
good.
learned. Yeah.
He's really he did. Yeah, I don't know why they went a different direction than that because he's so iconic.
Well, it's
so good.
because we were going to talk about this because that's not Big Boss or Snake, and that Big Boss and Snake.
In Ground Zeroes it is, and it's still.
That's true. I guess Ground Zeroes. I guess Ground Zeroes it is.
Because I would accept that, but that's not. Yeah, that's not. It's not the case. Like they did that at one point.
We need to have like a diet TwinCast where we go over all of this stuff.
Let's
Yeah.
not tell.
4 hours long.
One tidbit I had learned just kind of based on that in that Game Informer interview series was that
Was it Ben Hansen that did that interview?
Yeah, and Tim Turi, I believe.
Okay, yeah.
But David Hayter had to essentially audition for every game after that. He didn't. He didn't apparently in Kojima's eyes, or maybe there's some upper management at Konami, but he still had to audition for MGS2, MGS3, and 4. And
That's wild.
if I remember right, in the interview that I listened to, is they just simply didn't call him back for 5. He didn't even know why, and I don't think he ever really got a reason. People speculate, and I tend to believe that Kojima was just such a huge movie fan that he wanted a big name actor in there, and he probably had always wanted that and never got it. But that's just kind of pure speculation. So he probably was able to get Sutherland and went that direction.
Yeah, he is back for the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake. So
yeah,
well, that's good. Well,
Yeah,
Kojima is not there anymore.
yeah, that's true.
What about the music in this game? T, I noticed that you've put some things in your notes here about the music. What do you think about the music?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I mean, the themes are so iconic and they show up throughout most of the games that it's really, I think, hard to separate, like, if it's actually good anymore or if it's just, like, it just embodies everything that you think about these games when you hear it. But I think it's really good. I mean, the soundtrack is cool. It's kind of like techno, but also they throw in some tracks like the opening theme, which is just, I mean, as far as video game, like, openings, you get the PlayStation startup sound, the Konami little doot thing, and then you go right into that opening theme. So that's just unbeatable. Like the sound design, I think is really good. The only complaint that I have, because I think it holds up today. The only complaint that I have is Sniper Wolf's. Again, I don't like Sniper Wolf for whatever reason. Her accent is like a pretend Russian accent. and she's like a kurd. That was my only complaint. Other than that,
A
the
little
sound design is
inconsistent
awesome.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it's you could argue um, that most of the aspects of this game have sort of deteriorated a little bit with time, or I should say, aged a little bit with time, like the graphics and the gameplay and controls. I don't feel like the music has really aged that bad at all. It it still holds up, I think.
Yeah, it's still really good. And I always have a soft spot for like uh emotional songs sung in a foreign language, like you have at the end of this movie, or this game, where you get like the bears sliding down the ice or whatever, and you
Yeah.
got the you got the song going on there background. It's really really beautiful.
Yeah,
Good
the
sound.
best is yet to come. That song really sticks in my mind when I first beat that game back when we were in high school, as just like searing it into my mind, and it just kind of just put a bow on the game, and it just gives you that feeling of like, it just wrapped everything up. I just love that song. That song's awesome.
Well, and just kind of tying back to the story, we didn't really actually sum up like the story, but I think like that whole end credits where that song is playing is a really good way to bookend the themes of the game, where it's like in nature, where you are like trapped in this brown, orange, gray facility for so long, and you're in with all this unnatural stuff like the nuclear waste and stuff like that. But then you get out into the Alaskan wilderness and there's nature and it's kind of healed. And
Caribou right there.
yeah, there's the caribou. Yep. So yes, I think it's so perfect.
Yeah, and I don't know about you guys, but this was, that kind of wraps up the entire last act of the game, right? And for me, it was like I probably started playing Rex fight, if I remember right, probably 8 or 9 p.m., right, in a summer night. And by the time I hit that part of the game where the best is yet to come is playing, and I've wrapped it up, and I'm kind of like I'm catching my breath after the entire ending sequence. This is probably about 3 a.m. So when it's 3 a.m. and you've just gone through the ending of Metal Gear Solid, that song hits a little different. Definitely stuck with me though.
Yeah. Um, man, uh, we didn't talk too much about the graphics yet in this game, but I mean, these are PlayStation graphics, right? At least you guys played the Twin Snake, so that looks a little bit better. But I mean, what is there to say about the graphics and especially the PlayStation graphics? How do you guys think it holds up today?
I don't think it holds up that bad, actually. I mean, it does. I really liked the choice of not having moving like a mouth that moves with it. They just kind of like bobbled their head, and then they leave it to the codec things. And I really enjoyed the color palette that they chose to make it all seem a little bit cold and gray and more movie-like for some reason. I don't. It must have been a choice that he made because yeah, I mean it looks great. So sorry to cut you off, T.
Oh no, yeah, it doesn't stop you from enjoying the game, but it's of the things that this game will be remembered for. It's the graphics will not be one of them.
It is blocky. It's got that PlayStation, and this is probably just my nostalgia goggles speaking here, but I kind of follow in line a little bit with Cam. Like the whole game is just like a vibe, right? And so while it doesn't hold up, like it looks so dated compared to man, just put it next to like the Death Stranding 2 trailer. Like it's like it's totally like night and day. But the vibes of this game, it does a really good job of getting you into the world and the vibes and huge nostalgia in my mind on the graphics of this game. And I wasn't taken out of it. I was still being sucked in. It didn't distract at all.
Compared to some other games of this time, that I still think it holds up better than some of these other 3D games.
Yeah.
So.
Cody, any thoughts on the graphics?
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. It as far as the fidelity and the graphics quality, I don't think it was anything special. I think it was good. and at the top of the list at the time. But I just think, like you said, the style, the vibe, it was so stylized, and I think the animation, um, and there's a lot of kind of, I wouldn't say quite iconic, but there's a lot of animations that kind of at least stick with me. When somebody shoots at him and he kind of does a backflip, or when the tank shoots at him and he does that backflip and
He
kind of does
slides along the ground.
slides backwards. Yeah,
Yeah.
like almost like an Akira slide on the bikes. Of course, Meryl and her animations. We'll say that's a big part of the story, and
The way she runs.
The way she runs, yes.
yeah,
It doesn't translate very well on PS1 graphics. I was like, what? I was like, what am I look? I was like, what am I looking at? I don't get
Right.
it. And then it had to explain it to me, and I was like, oh, okay.
yeah. And then I just remember there's a few codec animations that always stick out to me, like Otacon freaking out when he tells you about all of his stealth suits going missing, and Mei Ling getting pissed off at you and just sticking your tongue out. I don't know if you guys ever did that one, but it just, looking back on it, in between playthroughs and remembering it, I don't ever really think about how crappy the graphics were like I do in other games. It's just that style, the vibe, just the whole kind of personality of it sticks out a lot more.
I will say, like, I mean, Cam and I are pretty big proponents of CRTs. I think that there is something that lost when you play this game on like a regular LCD screen. The blending it works a lot better on a CRT screen than it does an LCD screen. So take that for what it's worth.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, man, I think that we could just keep going, but let's go ahead and put a bow on this discussion. We have our tier rank discussion. It's just a normal tier rank that you like S through F tier rank. But what we've also done is we've just assigned a point value to that tier rank so that we can easier come to the score. So let's go ahead and provide our tier rank on this. You know what? I'm gonna let Cody. You'll go last. Cam and I will go first here. So I'll start. Man, I just had a blast playing through this. There's some of these games where it's been a little bit of a chore going through, but I loved playing through this. It wasn't without its faults. We talked about it, so. I don't think I'll go full S/6 on my tier rank here, but I am going to give it a solid 5. Like, there is some nostalgia that carries it today, but it's an all-time great. So, solid 5, probably one of the better games that we played so far in our podcast history. So I love it. So 5 for me. Cam, why don't you go next?
I'm just going to agree with you, Clark. Everything you said, ditto. We're twins. We have the same vibe here. So I'm going to go Twin Talk here. 5. I had so much fun playing it. It's a fun game. It's one of my favorite all time.
Look at these genes are controlling us, Cam. We're predestined here.
But which one of us is the weaker one?
We won't know.
Liquid Stevenson.
Are we going to be able to break away from what our genes have dictated that we were supposed to do? I guess not in this case. T, let's. What are your thoughts? Where do you rank this game?
There's a quote that they bring back in every single one of these games. They say age hasn't slowed you down one bit. It has slowed down Metal Gear Solid 1 in my mind a little bit. That said, it's a very unique experience. It still offers a lot today, and just because of the way that Kojima has created the entire series, this is just one of the foundational pillars. So if you like Metal Gear Solid, you're going to love this game. So I give it a 4.5, just because of just because of some of the warts, some of the wrinkles that it has in this day and age. Like it wouldn't stand out in the same way. But it's a worthy play and it's a fun play.
Yeah. All right, Cody, it's up to you. Finish up this discussion and let's see what you think.
I would give it a solid, no pun intended, 5. Giving it a 6 or S rank, would it still be one of the best games of the year for release today? I don't think so, just because of the kind of outdated controls. Top-down view, I don't think translates well to this day and age for this type of game. But man, it is still an all-time great. There's still so many memorable moments. Like I said, once you kind of get into the groove of controlling this game, pace is really it's good. You can code hit conversations can run a little bit long, but if you're kind of in the mode and you're sort of sit through those, I think there's enough there to carry you through the end of the game. And I'm with you guys. I had a ton of fun going back and playing it again. It's one of those things like movies with twists where you kind of want to go back and knowing the twist, you kind of want to pay more attention to what people say and if there are any kind of Easter eggs, which there are a lot in this game, but that makes subsequent playthroughs a lot more fun. Just knowing the twists that are coming and seeing how those seeds were planted.
Yeah. What a solid game. So 5's around for us older folks, 4.5 for T. I think this is going to be at least, if not the highest, at least really close to the highest one that we've scored so far.
Second only to King's Quest V.
When you think of iconic games,
I think this is actually going to beat Super Metroid. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I think it deserves it. I think it deserves it.
Yeah. Well, what a good discussion, good panel. Thanks so much for joining us, and TwinCast is out.
Man, I was not prepared for this. We got Master Miller too.
Oh my gosh.
I was about to say, I remember going under the bed and him laughing at you. It's like, haha, what are you doing?
Yeah. But he just forgets when he thinks he has the runs and goes to the bathroom. He just forgets that
He's got more important things. Yeah, more important things going on in his life.
Oh, that's great.
We got the props.
I guess I could just walk out of the room and say that I'm wearing stealth armor.
Yeah.
I was hoping Trevor would be Naomi, but
Dang. Sniper wolf?
It's not too late. Underneath this hoodie,